All right, mic check, mic check. I think everyone can hear me. There should be no desktop audio either. I turned that off, so hopefully everyone can hear me in here. Hopefully everything's good. Happy Wednesday to everyone. I hope you're all having an awesome day. Looks like we're live now. And again, I hope everyone can hear me. Really interested in this topic. I don't know about you guys, but I've really developed a green thumb, as they say, over the last couple of years. So I really want to just go over. It's something that I'm just getting into with gardening and everything like that. Last year I was really into it. I jumped in with both feet. Trust me, I was well into it. I was kind of taking care of it all year, and I want to be able to talk about that and just share my experience with you guys, and then kind of what we're going to for the next phase for this year with the garden, because it's only probably going to get a little bit bigger from from now. But thank you guys so much for joining the chat. I always really appreciate when you guys come in on the Wednesdays in the middle of your day. It always makes me really happy. So thank you to everyone out there. And again, I hope I can be heard. If someone can just give a yes in chat, that's all I need. One yes, and I know I'm good to go. But from my end, it looks like everything is running fine. So we'll sort of start with a discussion of everything that, what I've learned, things that I want to try to improve this year, things that I want to add to the garden perhaps. But specifically, I want to get into maybe some of the easier ones. If you're just starting out, what were some of the easier vegetables to grow? I also did a couple herbs, so we'll get into that as well. All right, I'm a big fan of even growing my own herbs. And this year, I really, really want to increase the number of herbs that I'm growing. So I'm pretty excited to share that with you guys, because there's a few videos that I've even watched and read up on a few things where you don't even necessarily need a garden. You can just do it from right inside your own house, which is actually pretty amazing when you think about it. I mean, how much better does that get? So, again, we started here. I know some people might have to be waiting for the ads and stuff like that. So, if you're listening to this non-live, I'm just sort of waiting for people to get into the chat and for someone to give me a yes so they can actually be heard. But I'm sharing with you guys, this year's going to be a big year for gardening for myself, for Foods for Health. And I want to make sure, and here's my plan, and here's another thing that I want to make sure that I get across to you guys. My plan is to sort of take you on my gardening journey, all right? As someone who doesn't have all this experience, trust me, I want to stream this, and this is the topic for today too, because I want to learn from you guys. So not only am I going to be sharing what I've learned, all right, and some things that have helped me over the last year, the last 2 years. Last year was a much bigger year than the first. I think this year is going to be much bigger than last year. But I want to learn from you guys as well and have open dialogue on this, because this is something that I'm very interested in. I mean, we were getting vegetables all the way up until October, maybe even early November of last year. So we were getting tomatoes up until October, November that were just perfect, delicious. I was eating them every day. Wasn't having to buy them from the store, just with a couple seeds, all right, little plant. And then that plant produced probably, I'm not even joking with you guys, and we had multiple tomatoes, but your regular tomatoes, beef tomatoes, probably hundreds of them, all right, probably hundreds. And same thing with the cherry tomatoes. So I want to share my experience with you guys, and I want to learn a little bit from you as well. But let's get into, and thank you so much for the thumbs up already, guys. I do appreciate it. But I think that's why I'm so excited, just from seeing there's something really nice about kind of watching something grow. You're sort of helping it grow, and then watching it sort of flourish and then produce food for you. Like, going through that whole process and that whole journey, you're kind of cultivating it from just this little seed or this little sprout, and then that sprout throughout the couple months turned into another thing, not just tomatoes, but another huge harvest, I'll call it, was our kale harvest from last year, which was absolutely amazing. We had incredible kale, incredible amount. We had kale for months and months and months, and that literally came from seeds. we always joked around because it looked like it kind of started out as 4-leaf clovers, and then from there turned into the kale that you would see just like at the food, but super dark green, look very healthy looking, and very easy. I will be honest with you guys, very easy to actually grow. So let's get into some of the ones that I added into my garden, and then some of the ones that I found easy, and some of the ones that didn't go so well, because I'll be honest with you guys, you're going to have some good harvest and you're going to have some bad harvest. Let me start with 1 or 2 that were really good, and then I can switch over and I'll tell you the ones that I found very tough and actually didn't get very much out of. So the first one I would recommend maybe to someone who is a little bit newer to gardening or starting a garden. My first one, and one that, again, I'll offer up to you, is just tomatoes of any type. Beef tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, anything like that. I find those very easy to grow. And I find if you can at least, and the one thing that I found that really helped with tomatoes, I had them in pots and I had them in soil. All right, so I did both pots and soil. No difference. Both gave great harvest. So we had tons of cherry tomatoes. Those were the ones in the pots. And then your regular sort of beef tomatoes were in soil. I think the most important thing that I learned kind of over the years was make sure they need a ton of sunlight. So make sure they're in an area that you have lots of sunlight available to them. I have them in a spot where they're getting almost 10 hours pretty much of sunlight. So tons of sunlight for those tomatoes. I found that was a big game changer for them. You don't want them hiding in the shade, because before, they would be a little bit closer to the wall, so you'd get a little bit more shade. But pulling them out just a little bit, giving them that sunlight, that direct sunlight for, like I said, on sunny days, you can get up to 8 to 10 hours in where I have them. I'm fairly lucky that way. The sunlight was huge, so moving them out of the shade was huge, but also watering them every day was huge. That's something that I learned. I thought maybe it would be like every other day. Some people might find this funny, but this is from talking. This is someone's point of view who never really had a garden before. So, it's much different than houseplants. Let me tell you, but much more rewarding too. But watering them every day, staying on top of them every day, really helped. Making sure that they're well watered, but not over watering them. You'll be able to tell. All right, you can look at the soil. If it looks like you're sort of flooding the soil, so you can see like that water sitting on top, especially if it's in the pot. So I'm talking about potted vegetables right now, like the cherry tomatoes. If you can see it it's almost like it's drowning, then you're good with water. You don't need any more. But once we got to that point, we were 100% fine. So kind of daily watering, a little bit every day, staying on top of the vegetables. That was another huge thing. So just the frequency of watering. It's just like humans. It's no different. We need water. The vegetables and our plants need water as well. And especially, we had a very hot summer last year. Very hot. Almost record setting, I think. The last 2 summers have been very nice. But if it's very hot, and remember I said that they were getting about 8 to 10 hours of sunlight per day, so they're getting direct heat right on them, then we definitely needed to water every single day. So we watered pretty much every day, and we saw great progress with that. So watering every day definitely helped with tomatoes, and tomatoes I found were one of the easiest ones for us to grow. So start with tomatoes. I think that's a good beginner one. If you're looking to start a garden, start with tomatoes. You can do them. From what I've found, I had them in both pots and I had them in the soil. I had my cherry tomatoes in pots and the regular beef tomatoes in the soil. Both were just as easy. There wasn't one that I would say was easier than the other. So you can use both types. Both types I found were fine. Now, another tip that I'll give you is watch the leaves or the branches of the tomato plant. You can tell which ones. I was cutting off, I forget exactly what they were called. Maybe they're called suckers or something like that. But basically they were branches or parts of the plant that weren't producing fruit. So they weren't producing any of the tomatoes. And they were just taking nutrients and taking water from the other parts. So you could tell these ones. So you want to pay attention to those parts of the plant. If someone in chat could write down what that is, then I would be greatly appreciated. But what I would go and do is, and the people who are helping me especially as well, is I would make sure that I would clip off those parts of the plant that weren't producing fruit. I would go right to the base of the plant, snip it off, make sure we weren't getting any of the extra branches or part of the plant that were taking nutrients, that water, the sunlight away from the parts that were actually producing the fruit. So clipping them off, and you can tell because sometimes I noticed those ones were a little more discolored, all right? So they were a little bit more discolored, or they had bigger leaves on them. I would go and I would just completely clip them off. And I did that maybe once a week. So it wasn't every single day. I don't think you're going to get that many branches, like little branches on them or parts of the plant growing. But like once a week, every like 10 days, go in there, clip some off, if it's not going to be producing any fruit. I thought that was great. All right, that really helped with me. Now, another part that I'll say that helped is if it's a cherry tomato, say you're doing a really good job, and just to make sure, I think we're live here. If someone can just post something in chat, that would be great. Because it's saying we're live. There we go. Just say, just someone give me a hi. Just so I know I'm not. I see the thumbs are going up, but I don't see any of your messages in chat. I just want to make sure it's nothing on my end. Because I'm kind of, like I said, I want to get into a discussion. I want to be able to make sure I'm learning from you guys as well. So that was another thing. So just clipping off the branches or parts of the plant that aren't producing any fruit. I think that's a big one, guys, because we don't want any wasted nutrients going to that part of the plant. Unfortunately, we want it going into the fruit, into the tomatoes, into any other parts, because we're not doing this just on our tomatoes. I did that on a couple of the other plants as well. Now, if you are using, and thanks for the thumbs up, guys, very much appreciated. And another thing that I will say you're using the pots. All right, so you're using pots to grow your cherry tomatoes. You're going to want to put something in there that will let the tomatoes, hey, Ray, thanks so much for posting, buddy. I'm glad I'm not talking to myself. I see you guys all in here, and I see all the thumbs up, but I thought maybe there was something wrong with the chat. But thanks, Ray. I appreciate it, buddy. Welcome again to the stream. Glad to have you in here. Very much appreciated. But if you are going to use, I think this is an important point. If you're going to use, and this is something that, I've been doing a while. I was kind of lucky in the sense that my grandparents were huge, man, I would almost call them farmers. They didn't live on a farm, but they had a huge garden. And so I took a lot from what they did as a child. So I was always around it. I was always around vegetables and growing different things. And I'm telling you, there weren't farmers, but man, the crops that they would yield were unbelievable, and their garden was huge. It was absolutely huge. Like, think of a whole backyard and a whole strip of a backyard just dedicated to gardening, to their garden. And man, you didn't want to be caught in there, because if you were in there, then you're in trouble. The garden was very serious. But I learned a lot just growing up from just being around like my grandparents, aunts and uncles, having a garden. My parents are good gardeners, actually very good. So, I didn't get into it until a little bit later, but now I feel like I'm jumping in with both feet. So with the tomatoes, the ones that are in the plants, or the ones that are in the pots especially, make sure that they have something to climb. All right, so I'll put a wire, it's almost like this circular wiring around it that one is going to help keep the plant inside of it. So it's not going to squeeze the plant. Trust me, it grows outside. But it gives it room to grow up. If not, it's just going to hang over. And if it's doing that, eventually it's just going to snap. And it's just not going to yield very much fruit. You want it to be getting nice and high, the leaves extending out, and some of those leaves that are heavy, when you're getting a lot of fruit on there, they're going to be drooping down too, so it kind of gives them a little place to rest. But I kind of put this little wiring around the plant. And like I said, it's not tight. It gives it tons of room. So don't think it's it's enclosure that's kind of squeezing on the plant. I'll be honest, when the plant grows to full like when it's its full size, you almost can't even see the wiring. That's how thin it is. All right, it just grows around it, but you need it to have some stability, and you need it to kind of contain it, because if you don't have that wiring in there, it's just gonna fall right over. It's gonna get too big. You're gonna have like branches with tomatoes on it hanging on the ground, so it needs that. Hey, Jan, sorry, Jan. I think it's Jan. Sorry, Jan, if I pronounce that wrong. I've had so many Europeans in here. It's like Jan or Jan. I'm getting thrown off here with you guys, but I think it's Jan. Is it Jan? I apologize, Jan, if it is. Thank you so much for coming in. And guys, remember, if you have any tips and tricks for me as well, I am more than happy to hear them, because this is pretty much going to be my second year with gardening. So I'm just giving you guys a perspective from my first year. I'm sure there's some people out there, some green thumbs, who've been gardening for much longer than me and have tons of experience. But you really want to make sure that it has some sort of like wiring enclosure, just so it's not drooping over. Like I said, if I didn't have that, I probably would have snapped my cherry tomato plants. They would have just snapped in half, or they would have been hanging on the cement. So make sure you kind of have that in there. It's going to help protect them. So I really love the pots for planting and stuff like that. You know, I find it very, very easy. You just need to make sure you're doing it right and checking your soil and everything like that. We were putting peat moss in there last year, so we'll do that again this year. But yeah, I think that would be the first one that I would say. I don't know if you guys, any of the other people who are into gardening here, would agree, but I think a great starter vegetable, or a great starter plant or fruit in this case, because tomatoes are fruit, are tomatoes, and any type. Remember, I've done cherry tomatoes for a couple years now, beef tomatoes last year in soil, and both were very, very simple. I found that they yielded a ton of fruit, and it was all summer and into the fall as well. Like I told you guys, October, November, which is very unheard of from where I am, we were still getting tons of vegetables and fruit. So I think it's just a great way. I think tomatoes are a great starter. And again, just make sure that you're staying on top of your watering, and make sure that they're getting a lot of direct sunlight. That was one thing I really had to stay on top of for the tomatoes last year. One thing I really had to stay on top, because it was so hot last year, and they're getting so much direct sunlight, that I really had to make sure you can just go and feel, and when you really get used to it, you can just look at the soil and just tell, okay, these guys need a little bit of water here. It's the soil's looking a little dusty, you know what I mean, like a little dry. So then you would just go and add the water. Oh, nice, started your dill and cilantro in the window. Ray, that's awesome. That's something that I really want to get into, more like kind of herbs and like cilantro and stuff like that. And you're putting it in pots, and it's in your window. Like, that's perfect. That's like the type of stuff that I want to get into. The big one that I'll just say it now before we get into my next one that I would recommend, or that I found easiest to grow. So tomatoes were the first, all right, both in pot and in soil. So cherry tomatoes and beef tomatoes I found to be very easy. Always do well with tomatoes. The next pot, kind of like what Ray is talking about, and it looks like we're going to lose the picture here, guys. I apologize for that. For some reason, we're 18 minutes in, and for some reason I just lose that picture, but that's okay. Like I said, we can still have our discussion, and it's all good. I was wondering if we were going to keep it today, but it looks like it went on us, so that's all right. But as Ray was kind of saying here, the one I want to get into for this year is trying to grow ginger in a pot. Is grow some nice ginger on my own. I think that would be great. If I could grow ginger and get that to grow and, yield some nice ginger, some organic stuff at my own place, I think that I would be absolutely ecstatic about that. So ginger is sort of on my list. I think dill and cilantro are great too, Ray. I used to do basil, but I think ginger is the next big one that I'm going to do this year. I haven't got any of the pots or any of the anything ready really for it. Sorry, I'm just kind of adjusting here our picture. Nothing quite ready for it, but I bet you in the next month and a half is going to be my kind of go-to time. Right now, it's just a little too cold to even start thinking about any of that stuff. But dill and cilantro both sound amazing. Like I said, I did basil. That was outside. That was soil, planted in the soil in the garden, not in a pot. And I found basil to be quite easy, to be honest with you. Just almost very similar to the kale, how the kale grew. So let's go. So that's the one I want to do this year. That's my next big goal, is to see if I can get ginger kind of growing from the pot. And then, if that works, great. Maybe next year up it, maybe get 2 of them going, or maybe even add from there. But I would really like to grow my own ginger. I don't know if anyone's done that yet. Oh yeah, I hear you, Ray. That's the great thing about using pots, and you see it so many times. You see it on Instagram, you see it on what's the other site? Why can't I think of it? Pinterest all the time. Like, you see so many great pictures of just like pots, pot gardening at home, things like that. Using things like your egg cartons. People are growing vegetables and herbs and spices in their egg cartons. So I think that's great what you're doing, and that's something that I want to get more and more into, and definitely will. So first will be the ginger. We'll see how that goes, and then we'll just probably go from there. But I think I'll have a couple sort of at-home projects for this summer, maybe using small pots. I haven't quite figured out everything, all the kind of small pot things that I want to do. I know most of the things I'm going to put in the garden, but like kind of the small little projects, like you just see so many cool things out there that I kind of want to try. And like I said, I'm going to be making videos on this type of stuff, so you guys will be along for the journey as well. But that's great. You don't need a lot of space, and you don't need a garden, so that's awesome you're able to make use of that. Now the other vegetable that I'm going to have in my garden this year that went really well last year was green beans. And I don't know about you guys, but they're one of my favorite. We talked about this in one of our streams before with vegetables. I'm just a big fan of green beans in general. Green beans, very easy to cook. You can add them to a number of different recipes. I like them just on their own, to be honest with you. But yeah, one of my favorite vegetables. And fortunately for me, one of the easiest for me that I found to actually grow. I found them very easy to grow, and I had 2 different ones again. All right, so you guys let me know if you've seen these before. I had one, all right, the climbers. All right, so the ones where you actually need to make sure. I almost had like this fence little setup for the beans to grow up. So they kind of climbed up this nice little fence that I had made. It was like this grate that we had put up. It was this very nice, kind of very big, gave it lots of room. So the climbing beans, that's what I'll call them. They probably have a special name, but for me, the climbing beans, man, you wouldn't believe how high they got. I think almost 7 feet tall. All right, climbing all the way up there, yield and nice and wide too. So it wasn't just like one straight vine. It was a bunch of vines climbing all the way up and just yielding a ton of a ton of beans. And throughout the whole entire summer again. And it's unbelievable how fast these things grow. Like once they get going, in 1 week, you might not be paying attention to it for like the height of them, but in 1 week, those things will sprout up so fast. And then once they do, all you have to do is just have a little bit of maintenance, make sure you're giving it that water, give it that direct sunlight. Same thing with the tomatoes. That's what I did. A little bit of peat moss in the soil. This was obviously soil-based gardening. I didn't do this in pots. This one, you need some air, pretty big area, at least for how much I put in. I needed a little bit of a bigger area. But I'm telling you guys, these things got massive. And so they're taller than I am, and I'm a pretty tall guy. And they grew throughout the whole entire summer, and they were just great. Tons of green beans, like I said, and very easy. All I really had to do with that one, I don't even know if I really clipped any of the plants off. Maybe like seldomly here and there if I noticed that we needed to, but they were very easy to take care of. So let me see if I can find the name of that. It might just be climbing beans. But I would suggest these ones, guys. I typed in, runner bean. So they're called a runner bean. Which beans are climbing? Okay, so they're just called pole or runner beans, things like that. Pole beans, yeah. So that makes sense because, like I said, I put them up on the that grate. We had a nice big, sort of almost like this gate and this thing that they could climb up. That's interesting. So runner beans, all right, or pole beans makes sense because that's exactly what I had. And then they just grew up it. And like I said, once they grew up there, and even when I did that search, it actually said that they're one of the easiest ones. So it's kind of nice that, if I would have messed that up, I would have felt pretty bad because apparently they are one of the more simpler ones. And this is why I'm suggesting it to you guys. I found them to be one of the easier ones for me to grow. And it yielded crop for the whole entire summer. And like I said, there wasn't much maintenance to it other than making sure we had it in a nice spot where it could get sunlight pretty much the entire day. Not the entire day. I think that would be just impossible here where I am. But for most of the day, like a good 8 hours, it was getting sunlight. And again, lots of water. Lots of watering was needed for those guys. But very easy to grow, very easy to grow. And then I also had not just the green beans that would climb up. So climb up your gate or your pole that you made. We made quite a big one and then had tons of beans from it. But we also had kind of like these bush beans. So they were plants and then they would just sort of grow from there. It almost would look like the tomato plants, but they would just be growing beans. And those were absolutely just as easy and yielded beans the entire summer as well. So green beans, I think, are a really good beginner vegetable for people to grow. Tomatoes and green beans would be my go-to. If I had to choose two, guys, those would be the two that I would recommend. Tomatoes and green beans. And I like the runner beans, so if you do have a little bit of space, then it'll be even easier for you. But also for people like Ray, if you're going to grow them out of a pot, the ones that we planted, so sort of like I'll call them bush beans, the ones that were like the plant beans, those were just as easy. So you don't need a ton of space, and you definitely don't need a ton of garden room for them because you can just grow them that way as well. But I really like the green beans and I really like the tomatoes, probably the two easiest that I found to grow. And I found that they were growing at such a rate. That we were actually having to freeze the tomatoes. So think about that, guys. I'll be honest, I think I'm even taking some of the ones that I froze from last year out now and eating them. So that's why I'm suggesting tomatoes for you guys. Tomatoes, you plant a few tomato plants there, you're going to be getting tomatoes all summer and you're going to be getting a huge amount of crop. Like we got so much last year, we ate them almost into the winter, and then we had to actually freeze them because we couldn't eat all of them. So, tomatoes are a great choice. Sorry, Ray, missed your comment here. Basil and parsley. Ooh, next, along with some watercress. Very nice. All very healthy, as well, which is great. Watercress, very underrated. I'm a big fan of watercress. I think I might have done a couple of videos on that, but just even great adding into, a lot of people will throw watercress into their green smoothies. You don't need a lot. It's the same thing with parsley too. They'll add that in there. And again, you don't need a lot, just a little bit of watercress, a little bit of parsley, and then you're good to go. So those are really nice. I've done parsley as well. Basil and parsley I've done, and then watercress I haven't. So that might be an interesting one to try as well. But I found basil and parsley to be on the easier side as well. So basil and parsley did quite well. And they were non-pot. They were in the soil. So they're in my garden. Sorry, as I take a sip of coffee here, guys. Cherry tomatoes are awesome. I agree. You know what? I never used to be a fan of tomatoes, but I eat them every day now. Isn't that funny? I used to never like tomatoes, never had tomatoes, but now I eat them every single day pretty much. They're in my diet. I grew so many. Someone needs to eat them. But no, I actually do enjoy them. I'll put them on kind of healthy sandwiches, or put them in healthy recipes, things like that. You can do a ton with them. That's why another reason why I like to kind of say tomatoes and green beans, offer that up to you guys. You can add them to a bunch of different recipes, because at the end of the day, don't forget, we're all about healthy meals and healthy food choices here as well. And this year we're going to be a lot more into the garden throughout the entire summer. Like I said, I want to make sure that I bring you guys along for the journey. So let's talk about what else. Let me give you one that didn't go so well. So I told you about the tomatoes and the green beans, the two different types. So that's 4 pretty much. All right. And I've been going on and on about how easy it was and how much we got, and what I had to do. I just made sure to water and plants. But let me give you one that didn't go so well, guys. So we had a couple strawberry plants in the garden. And for some reason, we could just not yield we yielded some strawberries, but they were just so small. They're so small, and they never really even ripened that much. We might have got like a handful over the whole entire summer, but I found strawberries to be very tough to grow. Trust me, the ones that were growing in my backyard were not the ones that you buy at the grocery store. They were much different. They were like super small. They were, like I said, they weren't as ripe. They're almost like white. You know how you get a little bit of that white on top? A lot of that was white because they were so small. So I found strawberries to kind of be a little bit of a failure last year. I don't think I'm going to add them I'll be honest, I don't think I'm going to have them in the garden this year, because I was looking up some stuff for them. And, I tried pretty much everything. They were in a good spot of the garden. They were getting lots of sunlight. They were getting lots of water. We added everything in just like we would with all the other stuff, but we just could not get any strawberries. So I don't know, maybe I messed something up, but for some reason, last year's strawberry crop was, I'd say, poor at best, but that's okay. You got to try it, right? If you don't try it, then you never know. Oh, robins always got your strawberries? That's funny. Like squirrels or chipmunks will always try to take our cherry tomatoes, and they'll get them sometimes. You'll kind of see them on the ground, or it can really be quite... sometimes you'll be standing outside and they'll go for them. So, yeah, I definitely know what you're talking about, right? We would wake up early and pick some for breakfast. So that's nice. Yeah, that's really nice. Waking up early and, checking out the garden. Sometimes I would water. Usually I would water at nighttime, but it'd be nice to I would go outside and look in the morning and, just kind of start my day. Sometimes going out there, not necessarily checking on the garden, but as you're walking past, you notice things here, things there. If anything needs a little more water, how things are growing. So I think I found the tomatoes and green beans to be the two easiest. I found the strawberries by far, way more than anything else to be the hardest to grow. And we didn't get very much strawberries last year, I'll be honest. It was probably a handful at best. Now, another one that I want to make sure that I let you guys know is one that did do quite well last year. There was 2 other ones, all right, that I want to make sure I bring up. One that did very well was cucumbers. And we actually had a great crop of cucumbers last year. And, I thought they would be like smaller in size, not expecting the cucumbers that you would get from like at the store, things like that. But some of the cucumbers we got were actually, pretty amazing to see, just how well developed they were and how well they grew. So I found cucumbers were another great choice. I don't know if I'd put them up there with tomatoes and green beans. Those seem to be like you plant, you do everything, and then just tons of crop. For the cucumbers, yeah, there was a good amount of crop for them. We had to work for it, but not as much as the tomatoes and the green beans, that's for sure. But we did get a decent amount of cucumbers. So if you're wanting to start and you have the space, because you will need a little bit of space for cucumbers, cucumbers I found to be quite a good one. So that would be another one that I would offer up to you guys. And that was one that I had in my garden last year. and one that I'm going to have this year for sure. So cucumbers definitely did well last year. And then I was actually quite surprised with how well they actually did do. You know, it's funny because they did so well last year with the cucumbers. And I like making a little bit of tomato cucumber salad and stuff like that. So I had a nice crop to be able to do that. I'll say, it was very nice to be able to have those, and to coming right straight from your backyard is even better. It's a great feeling when you can kind of make your own food. But they went so well. I think this year I might try zucchini as well with cucumbers. So kind of stay a little bit more on that path also. So not only have the cucumbers, but also add in some zucchini and stuff like that. But I found cucumbers to do quite well. Like I said, there wasn't as much crop as tomatoes and green beans, but cucumbers were definitely one of the more easier ones, and they definitely did very well. Strawberries were at the bottom, tomatoes, cucumbers, or tomatoes, green beans, and then cucumbers just below the top. Hey, Marilyn, hope you're doing well. I don't garden anymore, but I used to plant marigolds. Ooh, nice. And cayenne peppers near my plants as an insect. Oh, that's smart. Never heard of the marigold. That's actually really smart. Cayenne peppers would do well. They'd probably there's some rabbits that like to kind of get into some of the stuff. I think they enjoyed the strawberries more than we did last year, to be honest. But they could kind of have those. Like I said, the strawberries did not turn out well. But marigolds, okay, that's interesting. I'll definitely look into that, Marilyn. See, this is what I love. This is why this stream is almost just as much for me as it is for you guys, because I'm learning a bunch of stuff from you guys. So as insect repellent, that's good. Okay, so I'm going to write that down. Marigolds and cayenne peppers. Interesting. Yeah, and cayenne is so good for you too. Even just growing them is interesting. But let that, I'll eat cayenne peppers. I don't mind a little bit of spice here and there. So that's a good segue into the next thing, because with cucumbers, there's the two. Remember I said the two kind of on the rung below tomatoes and green beans, cucumbers and green peppers. All right, so green peppers actually did very well last year. And they were funny. They were sneaky because, you couldn't really see them too well. They'd sometimes be hiding in the back almost on you, I felt like sometimes. But then you would check on them, and then, boom, you had 3 green peppers, just perfect, ready to pick almost. Maybe a few days or a week away. But they seemed to do really well last year, I'll say. They were very much like the cucumbers. Sometimes you would check and you'd be very surprised at just how far along that they had actually come in so little time. And so we got some really good green peppers last year. We didn't do bell peppers or anything like that. It was just green peppers. But as someone who, if I had to choose, I would choose to eat bell peppers over green peppers. But I don't know. I just think it tasted different. Maybe it's just because I was growing it, but I thought the green peppers were very sweet tasting. They tasted different from what I was normally used to, because I find bell peppers very sweet. I could eat bell peppers like chips, and I eat bell peppers every day. Green peppers, not as much, but I will eat them. But I'll usually eat bell peppers every day. I'm going to eat them today. But, with the green peppers last year, I thought that they were great, and they tasted great, and it yielded good crop. And again, I was very surprised, with both the cucumber and with the green pepper. So again, if I had to make a suggestion, I think green pepper and cucumbers might also be something that, maybe someone who's newer, like I was, or just starting, again, like I was, maybe add that to your garden. And the nice thing is, too, is you're getting really, really good greens out of all of this. Again, if we're thinking back to our healthy diet, we're getting green beans, we're getting cucumbers, we're getting good peppers, very high in nutrients, just those alone. Then you have tomatoes, lycopene, all that good stuff. I would really consider it, guys, if you're starting. Maybe try adding cucumbers and green peppers. The only thing that might hold you back is you will need some space for it. The leaves are pretty big on them, so you'll need a little bit of space so they're not overcrowded, and you can make sure that each plant gets enough sunlight. So you will need a little bit of space for them, and that's why I say it almost felt like they were hiding on me sometimes, because the leaves, the plants were so big, and they would be kind of tucked underneath. So you'd actually have to go around or look at from a low angle, and then you would see them under there. So just make sure. I think that those ones would be a little bit tougher, just because you would need some good space if you are adding them to the diet or to the garden. Sorry. The marigolds are yes. That's the first thing I thought, Marilyn, when you said that with marigolds. Like, it just hit, like I could just smell. So very fragrant. The bugs don't like the strong smell. It totally makes sense. Absolutely. And same thing with the cayenne pepper. I could imagine they wouldn't like that too much either. I know. Like the rabbits and stuff like that would not like the cayenne pepper. Hey, Hebu, I think that might just be you. Is anyone else getting sound? Ray, can you hear me? Marilyn, can you hear me? From the looks of it, it looks like everything's fine on my end. But just let me know if you can. Because it looks like someone's saying there's no sound in here. But I think we're good to go. But yeah, I would definitely tomatoes, green beans, and then my next list would be probably go with cucumbers and then green peppers from there. And then even with the green peppers, I would go with, you could do bell peppers. All right, thank you, Marilyn. So Hebu, it must be you, buddy. Turn your, unmute your mic or turn your mic up. Because I think everyone else can hear me, and by the looks of it, it looks like everything's fine. Perfect. Thank you, guys. Yeah, refresh sometimes might have problems. I think it was just on him. But yeah, those would be the ones those are kind of my top 4. Now, in my top 5, let me give you one that kind of surprised me, to be honest with you, because it started out really slow, very slowly, and then just came out of nowhere. Hey, Joshua, good to see you in chat, buddy. Thank you so much for coming in here. Really enjoying this garden talk. It's kind of giving me nice memories from last year, even with everything that was going on in the world. It's funny, these memories from the garden last year. And thank you, guys. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, Ray, for letting me know that the sound was fine. I appreciate that. But let me tell you guys, one that really kind of blew me away, to be honest. I thought it was going to be almost a fail. I thought it was going to be similar along the lines of how the strawberries turned out. But the one that actually did quite well was kale. We grew a ton of kale last year. And like I said, just made a few little holes, put some seeds in there, some kale seeds. Very easy to start. You just buy the little kale seed packets. Put them in, covered it up. It took a little while for them to sprout up. So at first I didn't know if anything was happening, if they were going to grow. It didn't look good to start, trust me. But then, like after a week or so, maybe even more, maybe a couple weeks, to be honest with you, they were like I would call the late bloomer of the garden. The kale was a slow starter, guys. After like a couple weeks, then you started to see it sprout up a little bit. And then you kind of saw some leaves growing up out of the sprouts. Like I told you, the kale, it almost looked like 4-leaf clovers growing up out of it. It looked really cool because you could see on each little hole that we had planted, you were getting it sprouting up. So all these kind of sprouts in different little areas that we had created. And then just out of nowhere, like within a week, those sprouts became like almost started to really develop into leaves, into kale, into what would eventually be the kale. But once they started growing, man, we were picking it was like every couple of days we were picking kale. And it was huge pieces of kale, guys, and super dark green, just looked super healthy. But I got to tell you, at the beginning, I didn't think anything was gonna come of it. I thought the kale was kind of a wash, just because it was so slow in developing. Literally, it took probably, I would say, a couple of good weeks to sprout up, so to break the soil, and then it took another week or so even for those sprouts to even really do anything. But once the kale started to get going, man, did it ever! It was great. It looked like a giant kale bush. Like, it was there's just so much crop that we had from it. And it was only from like 10 little holes we made. We put the seeds in 10 little holes, maybe 12, something like that. And then it just flourished from there. And basically we had kale for the entire summer. And like I said, super dark green, like rich green, in color. It was actually really amazing. So another one, sort of a dark horse, that I would probably tell you guys, if you're looking into growing kale, give it a try, because it really surprised me. Now, the only reason why it's not a little bit higher on the list is you need a lot of room for it. You need a ton of room, because the leaves, they're not growing up, they're growing out. So that's why I said it looked almost like a bush, because they were kind of just scattered all over. You're not going to really get them growing upwards. So like with the beans that I was describing earlier, the runner beans or the pole beans, the ones that could climb, you need a lot of area. We actually needed maybe even more than what we had. We gave it a good area to grow, but it just grew out so far and so much that I think this year we might even extend it a little bit. But even the best part about it is just how much kale we got from just these little seeds. It's so funny, and it's like I said, it started out very slow. I don't know if anyone here in the chat has grown kale before, or if you guys have had. Sorry, as I drink I'm finishing my coffee here, guys. But if you guys have any experience growing kale yourself, but let me know if that's how it was for you, because for me it was very surprising just how well it did. And it's going to be another go-to this year. There will definitely be kale in my garden in 2021. And I'll show you guys the videos, because I'm going to make sure that I put, it's almost going to be like the kale, almost like the gardening journey this year, I feel like. And kale, you guys will see. Maybe it'll be different. I don't know. Like that last year was my first time growing kale. But you guys will be able to see the whole process, and just, how it starts out slow, but by the end, I'm telling you guys, if it was anything like my yield, you'll definitely be happy that you planted them. Blueberries are so great for garden plants. Yeah, blueberries would be great, Joshua. I'd never actually tried blueberries. I was bringing up the strawberries before, but I had a very tough time getting the strawberries to grow, and to yield like good, solid strawberries. They were coming up, but they were very small, not very, very ripe. They just weren't good strawberries. Like I said, they were more for the rabbits and squirrels, I think, than they were for myself. And I tried, and took a lot of time. I wanted those strawberries to do well, but this didn't seem to happen. But that's okay. Sometimes like you'll get plants like that where you don't always get winners. But the kale was really good. So if you have the space, give kale a try, guys, because I think the kale was really, really great. And it was not tough. It was super easy to look after. Just again, needed that sunlight. It wasn't getting as much sunlight as the tomatoes and beans, I will say. And it still did really well. I mean, if the tomatoes and the beans were getting like 8, maybe 10 at most hours of sunlight, the kale was probably getting like 6, and it still did really well. But it's one of those ones where it needs a lot of water. We were constantly watering it. Joshua, I saw kale growing plants many years ago. Okay, nice. Yeah, so maybe you know exactly what I'm talking about then. But yeah, it started out slow and then kind of came on very, very fast. So that was great. So the kale will definitely be in my garden this year. Now there was some other another pepper that I had was jalapeno peppers. So we had a ton of jalapeno peppers last year as well. And let me just say, I like jalapeno peppers. I'm a big fan, but again, if you're not a fan of jalapeno peppers, don't put them in your garden because you're going to get a lot of these guys. Like we got a ton of jalapenos, and we were getting so much we could just not keep up with the crop. Like we were just not able to eat. We just weren't able to use up all of the jalapenos. So what we had to do was we picked them and then we froze them, and they're still in my freezer. So I would recommend jalapenos, but they're not too high on my list because they're kind of niche. You have to, if you're a big fan of jalapenos, boom, they'll jump up to the top of the list here. But if you're not a huge fan of jalapenos, then you're going to have a lot of them. For one, maybe you can give them to your friends or something like that, or just have them, enjoy them throughout the winter because, I cook them. If I'm eating like red meat, I'll cook with them. I'll throw them in different stir fries and stuff like that. But even, with all these different recipes, I could not keep up with the yield that we were getting. So, that's another one. Let me just make sure I'm not missing your comments here, guys. Kales, yes, kale is very good for you. Absolutely. Kale, right now, I'm eating every day. Right now, kale is in I put it in my smoothie. Sometimes I'll have kale salads, but I just find it easier just to put it in my smoothie. And yeah, absolutely. Tons of vitamin K, like one of the best sources of vitamin K out there. And tons of other nutrients. It's like a nutrient, like I always say in my videos, nutrient powerhouse. Like it's a legit nutrient powerhouse. Just tons of vitamins and minerals, antioxidants, anti-inflammatories. You name it, it's got it in there. So kale is great. That's why I'm suggesting you guys maybe give it a try if you're into gardening or anything like that. If you can make your own, you guys will be shocked at the size of the leaves, like the kale leaves that I was getting. I can't wait to show you these videos. I hope I get similar to what I got last year, but we were getting huge amounts of kale. It was great. So hopefully I'll hopefully be able to show you some of those ones. Now let's talk about another one. There was another interesting one from last year, and it might not be one that you guys are thinking of, but there is some fans out there of this vegetable, and it's rhubarb. Rhubarb. I don't know if there's any rhubarb fans out there. I don't make a ton of videos on rhubarb, but it is actually very nutritious. All right. So rhubarb was one of the vegetables that I put into the garden. And I have to tell you, I might have said that tomatoes were the easiest to grow that I found. I think rhubarb might have actually have it beat, if I'm being totally honest. Like rhubarb I could have put anywhere in the garden and it would have grown. I feel like it was that easy. It was one of the ones that got maybe some of the least amount of sunlight out of all of the vegetables. It got a lot, but it definitely got the least amount because we were just needing. We don't have the biggest amount to put of space to put our garden in. So like we didn't want to squeeze and jam everything in there. We wanted to make sure everything had good room. That's why we used some pots. That's why we used the runner beans so they could go up and not just have to have all these plants, overcrowded. We wanted to give them a good chance to actually yield crop and to do well. But man, we put rhubarb sort of in an area where I didn't think that it would do well, but it was one of the best yielding vegetables in the garden by far. And again, thinking on it now, I know I said that the tomatoes were the easiest, and tomatoes were very easy. And the best part about the tomatoes is you're picking them all the time. You're getting such a big yield from the tomatoes. Another thing though that's going to be in my garden is definitely rhubarb. And rhubarb, I don't know if it's well known as something that's easy to grow. Maybe you guys know more than me. But man, it was incredibly easy to grow. Like it was one of those ones where we could put it anywhere. You had to give it. We definitely watered it. We watered it just as much as any other plant. But I feel like it was kind of in a place where like you wouldn't expect it to grow because of the lack of sunlight. But man, this rhubarb plant, amazing stalks on it. So amazing rhubarb stalks, and you should have seen the stalks on it. Like they were huge, guys. And we probably had 5 good yields of those stalks. So you would cut the stalks off and then let it grow again. It would regrow. And I think we went through, it's either like 4 or 5. We picked them a bunch of times. And you can throw those stalks into your smoothies. I know some people that we were giving it to will make like a rhubarb pie out of it. So I don't know if that's the most healthiest thing, but you can live a little bit of rhubarb pie never hurt anyone. But I know that they were doing that with some of the people that were taking the rhubarb, because I couldn't eat all of it. It was so much like yield from it. That's why I was saying it's so incredible, the rhubarb that we were getting. I would not be able to add it to my smoothies. If I add it to my smoothies, it would only be a little bit. It's a little bit bitter tasting or sour tasting, I guess. I guess that's why it's kind of enjoyed in the pie. Kind of like a sweet with a sour. But if you guys are thinking, this is one that not a lot of people think about, but rhubarb I found it to be, at least, I don't know about your guys' experience if you tried growing rhubarb before, but if you like rhubarb, or you're thinking about adding rhubarb to your garden, from my experience, I found it to be one of the easiest to grow. And I literally could have put it anywhere in the garden. It's literally in a spot that would be, I wouldn't put the tomatoes there, I wouldn't put the peppers, I wouldn't put any other vegetable other than this rhubarb, because it's just not getting enough sunlight, and it just does not care. It just seems to not care. It's just going to yield crop no matter what. So I really love the rhubarb. I think it'll definitely be in the garden this year. It's kind of like turned into a staple now. I think it'll just kind of always be in there. And I enjoy growing it. It's one of those ones. It's again has huge. You eat the stalks. I'm not too sure. I might do a video on this, but the leaves and the nutritional value of rhubarb leaves, I don't know. We'll have to take a look at that. I've never actually looked that up. But huge leaves on this plant, on this vegetable, and then you just take the stalks, easily cut them off, wash them, and then you have them. And again. Not much more to it other than that. Okra is easy to grow. You won't waste, and it's great. Okra, that's an interesting one. Okra would be nice. We don't see okra up here too much. I see it in the grocery store every now and then, but it's not super popular where I am, Maryland. But it would be nice to grow. I've done a couple okra videos. Some of my favorites have been okra, actually, just even learning about it. Before I even did a video on it, I don't think I had ever tried it before. So isn't that interesting? And I always like to kind of give a try to everything that I'm going to talk about. And that's why, I'm telling you what's going to be in the garden, because this is all things that I've tried. I can tell you about the tomatoes and what worked and what didn't, and the strawberries, and the strawberry crop kind of failed because I kind of went through it last year. But okra, yeah, definitely. I've cooked with okra before, and I think you're right with grilling. Marilyn, I think you're right. You kind of nailed it. But I think there's a couple additions that I want to maybe make this year. I talked to you guys already. Blueberries would be nice, Joshua. I won't lie. Blueberries will be nice, but I don't think I'm going to add blueberries to the list. I don't know. I don't know why. I feel like maybe with the strawberries, how the strawberries went, I'm going to maybe stay away from them. But I'm kind of wanting to stick to vegetables this year, more on the veggie side. And don't get me wrong, it's not that blueberries aren't good for you. Like you guys have heard me say in many streams and in many videos, they're the antioxidant king. They're an amazing nutrition. They're a superfood in all senses of the word. So it's not that blueberries aren't good. It's just that I want to kind of keep more of the vegetable theme going. But then also herbs and spices this year. Herbs and spices and root sort of vegetables. Or roots like ginger root. I told you guys a little bit earlier, but one of the big ones that I'm really, and thank you so much for the thumbs up there, guys. I see we're almost in double digits now. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. But one of the big ones this year that you guys are going to see, and I'm going to be doing a ton of videos on, not a ton, but like healthy updates. I'm going to try to grow ginger, and I'm going to try to do it from a pot. So we'll see how that goes. But like I was saying before, it'd be a great feeling to know that I was able to grow my own ginger. And especially for some reason, I really enjoy the pot. Like, it doesn't take up a lot of room. The pot gardening, it doesn't take up a lot of room. You know, you can kind of move it around if you need to. You can tailor it just a little bit, put it in certain areas. The watering's a little bit different, so you can kind of give it its own attention. That's what I liked about the tomatoes as well. And then when you're gardening with pots, so you're putting your plants into a pot, you know, it's very easy to water. You almost know by like a few weeks or like a month in, 2 months in, you know how much water each one needs. Again, sometimes you don't want to drown the plants, and you can tell if you have good pots, ones that kind of have the some of the pots aren't so good just because I found that a few, not vegetable plants, but other type of flowers, if they're not in the correct pot, if you get too much rain, that they don't let the rain out, or they won't let the water out. So it'll just kind of sit in there, and it'll literally just drown your plants. So you need kind of good pots at the bottom too. That'll kind of drain some of the water out. Not huge ones. You don't want to lose all the water. That kind of defeats the purpose, but you kind of need something that, you know, so it's not getting overwatered. Like, let's say there's like a heavy rain, and you have your tomatoes in there. I know if there wasn't a little bit of a drainage system, like in the pots that I had, we would have lost the tomato plants because the pot would have just overflowed. And then you get a day or two like that, and then there's just no place for that water to go. It's just going to sit in there, and it's just not good for the tomato plant. So you got to kind of be careful even with putting them in the correct plant pots. But I think I really want to show you guys how the ginger goes this year. So ginger is like on my to-do list because you guys know how much I love ginger. I've done a ton of videos on it, on these streams, how often I recommend ginger, just the different ways that you can eat it. So putting it into smoothies, adding it to different recipes, grating it, and adding it to recipes. So many out there. Another one that I like to do is either make it a tea on its own, or you just chop up the root, and literally I'll add it to my green tea, and it makes a great addition. Not only is it taste good, I really enjoyed the taste of ginger. I think it's like a nice natural taste. It's almost like not really a sweetener, but like kind of an enhancer. But I think it goes great with green tea. But you're also getting a ton of nutritional benefits with the ginger as well. So that's why I'm really excited to kind of give that a go. Almost excited, like how I'm so excited with adding the kale from last year, doing kale again, because kale is one of my favorite leafy green vegetables, especially in terms of overall nutrition. Just seeing how much grew last year, like I'm super excited for this year to give it another try, and hopefully, if we can even get 75%, knock on wood, but man, 100% or better than last year, I'd be very surprised. But if we could do even close to what we did last year, I would be super, super happy with just the amount of kale that we're getting. But yeah, the ginger's the big one. The big one's the ginger's definitely the big one. I've been watching a few videos on it. I've been reading a couple things on it. It seems like it might be a little bit tough in the pots. I don't know about what you guys are thinking. I just don't know if I'm just not thinking I'm going to have room in my garden for it. So I'm thinking the way to go is to do it with the pot, put it in a pot and then just kind of go from there. Just started my first batch of clover and alfalfa sprouts. Nice, right? That's awesome. Has it started growing yet, or is it still kind of in the beginning processes? See, the big one for me, like I think I'll try to do basil. I'll do maybe parsley. Those are two ones that I've done before in the past, which are really good. Both super nutrient dense as well, and both were very easy to grow. We were getting so much we were giving it away. like we were just getting so much basil and so much parsley, you just could not eat it all. But the ginger is the one that I think is going to take the most time. or at least the most effort, or at least a little bit of a learning curve. Unless someone in here has done ginger before and you can kind of tell me otherwise. I've seen some kind of conflicting stuff. You guys know me. I'm always researching and looking things up and, wanting to learn as much as I can on a topic, especially if I'm going to make videos on it. So you guys will see the ginger videos coming out. So I wanted to make sure I look those up a little bit. But I don't know if there's anyone in here who's ever grown their own ginger. I've seen a little bit of conflicting I've seen some conflicting, not reports, but kind of people's sort of opinions on ginger, whether it was easier to grow, tougher to grow, whether it was a good experience for them, if it was better in a pot or if it wasn't. I'm not too sure. I think I'm just going to dive in and see what happens. I think that's maybe the best way to learn, to be honest. If I didn't read one thing or look at one video for really any of the other stuff that I planted, I'll be honest. Even the kale, even when the kale wasn't doing so well, I don't think I really even looked anything up. I think I kind of just let it do its thing. And then eventually it just kind of exploded from there and we got a great batch. So I don't know. I think what I'll do is, instead of, sometimes you can overthink and over-research something. And, with the ginger, you can definitely maybe do that because it seems like everyone's got an opinion or at least an experience, and everyone's experience can be different. So I think I'm definitely going to just dive right in, see how that goes, and then I can share it with you guys, and you guys will be able to see. I did it in a colander with paper towels. Oh, nice. Oh, 3 days. Wow, that's fast. That's a smart way of doing it with paper towels. That would actually make really good pictures, right? Doing it like that. Very clever, Again, you don't need a ton of space. You don't need a ton of, a bunch of different tools and stuff like that. If you're doing herbs, spices, things like that, there's tons of different ways that you can grow it. You don't need a huge garden in your backyard. My garden in the backyard is not huge by any means. It's like a normal sized garden. It doesn't even take up the whole garden. We have plants and flowers on some of the other areas, but if you can make the most of the space you have, you can be pretty successful. Like last year, I would say it was a very successful gardening year for me, and for the household. So we're gonna try to do it again, and I was very surprised how easy the pots were to use. Like with the cherry tomatoes, again, you just want to make sure with using pots, if you're putting tomatoes in there, or even like the green beans, definitely if you're gonna have the runner beans, I wouldn't recommend it though, because even if you did put the runner beans in there and gave them something to climb, you would really need something quite large sticking out of the pot to be able for them to climb up there. Because I'm telling you guys, the runner beans went up probably like 7 feet, and I think they would have kept going. No joke, they would have kept going had it been longer, because they started wrapping around at the top. So they definitely still had more room to grow. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend those, but don't forget, I did 2 types of beans. We did the runner beans, like the pole beans that I just talked about, but then also the ones that come just with the plants, almost like they look like a green pepper or a cucumber plant. And those were easy too. Maybe those would be the ones that I would put into the pot. Marilyn, how are you going to plant the ginger from a seed or a piece of ginger? I'd like to plant some. It's great for our arthritis. See, that's the interesting thing, Marilyn. That's what I've heard conflicting sort of things on. I was thinking seed, but then other people are saying that it's easier growing from just a piece. But I didn't even know. I didn't even know if that was possible. Growing it from like a piece. Well, I'll have to see, because I was thinking seed the whole way. But you're 100% right. It's arthritis benefits, even for like digestion. Like its anti-inflammatory benefits are great. So a lot of anti-arthritic properties in it. But I've heard conflicting sort of sort of stories on, do you grow it from a seed? Do you grow it from the root, almost like with a little bulb attached to the end? So it would be interesting if someone maybe gave a little input on that, because I was thinking seed and then letting it kind of go from there. But yeah, someone else might have a better idea. Maybe a little piece. It's one method they're getting sun out and growing even more. Yeah, I bet, Ray. I'm sure that they're doing great from the sounds of it. Up in 3 days. That's perfect. Hey, Deborah, how you doing? Welcome into chat. Good to have you here. Good to see you. We're just talking a little bit about the gardening here. I don't know. You know what? I think what I'll do maybe with the ginger, Marilyn, is maybe you can buy like those little tiny pieces. So when you think of like the ginger root, don't think of like a piece cut off or something like that. It actually looks like a little piece of ginger, and then it can kind of sprout up from that. That's what I've read, at least. Maybe you need to set it in water for it to take root first. I think so. I think you might, or even just like at least like soil or even a pot. It's all brand new to me. Like I said, the ginger is going to be super brand new. Like, it's interesting. If you know how ginger grows, it's actually quite. It looks like almost like green plants. Like, picture a green plant growing out, almost like big piece of green grass, almost like a tomato plant, really. Like, picture like a tomato plant without any tomatoes on it, and then you rip out the leaves, and then the plant, and then underneath is like the bulb of ginger. It's very odd. To me, it was very odd looking, because I haven't grown anything like that before. I've never grown any root vegetables. Everything I've grown has been on like plants. So it's going to be an interesting situation. I'm just not sure what the best way to start it is. As someone who's never grown it. Oh, good, Deborah. Good that you're doing well. And thanks, like I said, again, thanks for joining us in here. Thanks to everyone. Like I said, on Wednesday afternoon, talking about gardening, all you guys popping in here, I really appreciate it. But the thing I like about the ginger as well is not only can you add it into the garden, but you can very easily do it in pots as well, which is awesome. I think it's great. Like I said, one of my favorite things is planting with the pots, just because you can give everything its own little attention. You can set it up nicely. It's kind of separated. If it needs more sunlight, you can move it around. You can give it more attention when it comes to watering and things like that. But from everything I've read, I don't think the ginger will be too bad this year. I think the ginger, if you really think about it, it's not any different. Just because it grows a different way, it doesn't mean that it's going to be any harder or easier. I think it's just the same process. It's just going to take a little bit of patience, make sure it gets a good start, and then you're good to go. But I know a lot of people who do it in pots. In fact, most of the people I know who've done it have done it in pots, and you can get a good crop. So I'm gonna most likely do mine in a pot or multiple pots, and then we'll see what comes of it. With herbs, well, Deborah, I'm glad you asked, because I have 1 year of gardening experience. As I said at the beginning of this stream, I kind of mentioned everything that was in my garden, what went well, what didn't go well, a couple of tricks that I learned along the way. But I'm 1 year in. This stream was almost as much for me as it is for you guys, because I'm very much a beginner when it comes to the gardening. But I would say for the herbs, the best method, or the method that worked for me, I've really only done it twice, and each one was just planting in soil in a just like a normal garden, like not in pots, but a lot of people do it in pots too. I know even Ray said he did things like dill and cilantro in sort of pots. near his window. So that's a great way to do it too. I mean, if you don't have as much room and you will still want to grow some herbs and things like that, you can definitely do them in pots. But mine were actually in the garden, and it was a huge yield. Like, it was unbelievable how big these herbs actually grew. It was so much. It was basil and parsley, Deborah. It was so much that I could just not eat it all. We were giving it away. And I know people had to freeze it just because it was so much. I remember adding it to smoothies. I would never add it to smoothies before. And then that was the first time I was ever adding it to smoothies, just because there was so much. But no, it was very easy as well. So the method that I found was just regular, planting in your garden, just like you would any other plant, with the seeds. Kind of like how I explained with kale. We just made a couple holes, put the seeds in, and then just let it flourish from there. Takes a little bit of time to start. Ray's seemed to come up a lot faster than mine. My kale took forever to sprout, but once it did, it did not turn back. Trust me, it kept going. So I think that's one nice method. But again, if you don't have much room, or you want to do it even inside, then you can do it inside as well. I've seen tons of pictures of people planting herbs in pots near the window or anywhere where it can get sunlight indoors. So there's lots of options. But the method I used was just regular soil method, planting it like any other plant. All right. And like I said, it was one of the easier ones for me to grow. Like the parsley and the basil, very, very simple. But let's talk about one more thing that I wanted to make sure I touched on. Most seed packets have the depth to grow them in, and watering guides. Yeah, I used for the seed packets. I definitely used the depth suggestions. For the watering guides, I kind of just went about it. If it looked like it needed more, with small pots, you're going to want to be careful. So if you're using pots, just be careful with the watering. Like I was saying before, you don't want to drown your plants or anything like that. Herbs, I could see that happening quite easily just because it is a smaller plant. So just be careful with that. So Ray brings up a good point. So I think the major things that I'm going to have in there this year, I'm going to take the strawberries out. The strawberries are going to be a no-go. I'm going to give up on the strawberries, but that's okay. I just feel bad for the rabbits and the squirrels now, because now they don't have anything to eat. But I'll have cherry tomatoes, green beans, cucumber, green pepper, kale. Gonna add probably zucchini, and then rhubarb will definitely be in there again. And then jalapenos will probably be in there again, just maybe a couple less. And then the one that I want to add is ginger. And so we'll add ginger. And then if I didn't say kale, the kale will definitely be in there. And then maybe one more herb might be in there, or some sort of root vegetable. But I'm thinking one more herb, like a basil or parsley or cilantro, something like that. And if I do that, that's like 12 or 13 right there, guys. That's more than enough for my garden. I don't think I could fit much more than that. Deborah, I'm kind of with you. If I end up doing the herbs, it's definitely going to have to be inside rather than outside, because I just don't think I'll have enough room, especially with the ginger. There's just not enough pots for outside, or enough room in the garden outside to add all these different things in on top of what's already going in there. Because the green beans, the runner beans, take up a ton of room, guys. I'm telling you. You'll be able to see it this year in some of the videos that I make. But, 7 feet tall, I don't know how wide this little contraption that I made for them to climb on was. Maybe 6 feet, 5 feet, something like that. And it covered the whole entire thing. And, it just yielded so much. And same thing with the cherry tomatoes. The cherry tomatoes were huge. They were in 2 pots, maybe 3 actually we did last year. I think might have been 3. But anyway, the plants got so big, like you couldn't even see these little wire things that that I had put in there to help contain them. It just kind of overtook them. So that's why I was kind of trimming off so many of the branches of the ones that weren't creating any of the fruit, just because these plants got so big. You could really tell when they kind of got overrun, because they would dry out very fast. That's why they needed so much water. All right, these plants got really, really big. So, just take that into consideration. But we're definitely doing the cherry tomatoes in the pots again. It's one of my favorite. I've done them for 2 years now, and we've gotten such a good yield from that stuff. So again, just going back to my first recommendation, I think if you're gonna start and say it's your first time, I think tomatoes and I think green beans, I don't think you can go wrong with. I think those are a nice starter pretty much for anyone. And, they'll definitely be in mine as well. So, all right, guys, we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much to everyone. Kind of a different topic today, but man, lots of fun talking about and kind of reminiscing about last year's garden. And sorry, D. Will, right as we're ending. Sorry about that, buddy, but unfortunately, I have to run. No, definitely not, Deborah. And depending where you are, but no, definitely not. We haven't even started planting around here. We're kind of gearing up for planting, but we still got a little whiles to go. So it's definitely not too late. Definitely not too late. I mean, we're just getting into springtime, so you still definitely have time. And yeah, sorry, D. Will. Right as I'm saying I'm going, you came in. But I'm looking forward to it this year. I'm going to definitely make some videos on it and just be able to, so I can show you guys how things are going, give some tips and stuff. Because I know just the way that I am, making videos on it, growing it, I'm going to be researching a ton of stuff. So I'll definitely have some maybe tips to pass on to you guys. And then if things work, things don't work, I'll be able to pass that on to you too. So I think I'll make some interesting videos. And I think the ginger one will be quite interesting as well. Because even like Marilyn said, ginger has so many health benefits. And the kale videos, those two very, very healthy. All of them are very healthy, but those two really, really stick out to me as being there. But all right, guys, thank you so much for coming in. Unfortunately, like I said, I have to run, but that was great. We just talked almost for an hour and a half about what's going into my garden. And I learned a lot last year, I got to tell you. So I can't wait to share that with you guys and for you guys to give me some tips as well. So I really appreciate you coming in. Deborah, Ray, D. Will, sorry I was a little late there, buddy. Ray, thank you so much for adding a ton in there. Marilyn, appreciate you for adding a lot in there as well. Jan, thank you. And everyone else, sorry if I'm forgetting anyone. But thank you guys. Oh, no problem. Yep, I'll repost the live streams, absolutely. So D. Will, if you're interested in anything garden-wise, then you can give a listen as well. But yes, I will always repost the live streams, absolutely. But thanks again, guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks for giving me some tips as well. And, I had a lot of fun, as always, during these streams. Always enjoy them on the Wednesdays as well. But I'll be back on stream on Sunday, and then we'll have more videos coming up in the next few days leading up until then. But thanks, D. Will. You as well. Everyone else, enjoy your day. I will see you guys and we'll talk to you guys on Sunday. All right. Oh, that's awesome, Marilyn. Yep. Yeah, that's a good idea. That'd probably be a good idea for the ginger as well. They can definitely give you some. Yeah, a nice project. Oh, that's nice. That sounds like a great idea. All right, guys. Enjoy your day. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will talk to you guys soon. We'll be back on stream on Sunday. All right, guys. Take care. Bye now.